hope that it remains here and keep in our records that he does have a GAR star. We were told back. We discovered the name of John Redmond. We knew that John was buried in the cemetery, but we did not know that John Redmond was a veteran of the Civil War. John and Lucinda were living in Clinton County, Michigan when John enlisted in the 23rd Michigan Infantry Company G on August 13, 1862. John Redmond died of cancer on April 8, 1874 at the age of 44. We learned from his death record that he was born in Michigan and was a farmer here in Three Oaks. His death record did not give the name of his parents. His wife Lucinda was born in Ireland in 1821. She drew a widow's pension after John died. From her obituary, we learned that she died at the home of her daughter in Jackson, Michigan early on Sunday morning, August 1st, 1886. Her funeral was held here in Three Oaks at the M.E. Church, and she was laid to rest next to her husband, John. Shortly after Lucinda died, her daughter, Minetta Redmond Murray, passed away. She may have been the daughter Lucinda was living with when she died. Minnie died on October 21st, 1886, and was brought to Three Oaks to be buried with her mother. When we started remapping the cemetery, we saw that Emma Stevens and Minnie Murray share this marker with Lucinda. As more research was done, a census from 1870 showed that Emma Stevens was living in the Redmond household. Emma was 36 years old and was listed as having no occupation. As our researcher dug deeper, a census for 1850 showed that Lucinda Redmond and Emma Stevens were sisters. Their father's name was Ansel and their mother was Laurel. Emma Stevens never married. At the time of her death on August 1st, 1900, she was 66 years old and living with her niece in South Haven, Michigan. She was listed as being a school teacher. According to her death certificate, she was brought back to Three Oaks and buried at Shed. Step underneath this tree. He was born in Ohio on March 1843. He was the son of Jacob and Lydia Platt. The family came to Three Oaks when it was nothing more than a mere settlement. According to his obituary, Benjamin, at the age of 18, fired up with patriotism, went to Detroit, and enlisted in the Civil War. From the records of Michigan volunteers, we learned that Benjamin enlisted in the 12th Michigan Infantry, Company C, on February 13, 1865. He mustered out on February 15, 1866, in Arkansas, along with Samuel Hammond, and returned to his home in Three Oaks. In 1873, Benjamin married Anne Elizabeth Kent. Benjamin's obituary says that he was the father of 5 children, but we have uncovered that he was actually the father of 6. 2 girls and 4 boys. 2 of the children are buried here in Shed. Francis Platt, who was only 9 months old when he died on October 4th, 1872, and Ernest Platt, who died at the age of 3 on April 20th, 1877. Little Ernest died from scarlet fever. Benjamin lost his wife, Anne, on January 1st, 1897. We learned from her obituary that was in the Three Oaks newspaper that she was only 15 years old when she married Benjamin. She died at the home of consumption around about 8 o'clock, the day being a Sunday. An interesting addition to Benjamin's story was found in the widow's pension files for Horace Salisbury. Benjamin and his sister Margaret gave depositions in 1890 that their father, Jacob Platt, was not legally married to a Rebecca Salisbury because he had never divorced their mother. Rebecca was trying to claim her widow's pension on her first husband. In the depositions, it stated that Jacob Platt never divorced his wife Lydia and even admitted to not divorcing Lydia to one of his children and an uncle. Jacob walked out on the family and illegally wed Rebecca Salisbury on November 7, 1864, while Benjamin was fighting for the North of the Civil War. Rebecca's husband Horace, who was in the regiment and company as Benjamin had died on June 27th of that same year in a field hospital from chronic diarrhea. Rebecca was 10 years younger than Jacob Platt, and In Rebecca's deposition, she claimed that on Jacob's deathbed, he confessed that he had never divorced his first wife, Lydia. Therefore, this did make Rebecca eligible for Horace Salisbury's pension. We're going to take just a quick step back this way. Jonathan W. Stevens' body is in one of two places. He is either here on Michigan soil or buried in an unknown grave at the Shiloh National Cemetery in Pittsburgh Landing, Tennessee. Before we try to solve that mystery, let me tell you what we do know about Jonathan Stevens. We know by his enlistment records that he was born in Cayuga, New York, about 1834, because he was listed as being 28 years old when he enlisted on February 2nd, 1862. The record says that he was 5 feet 6 inches tall with a dark complexion, blue eyes, and brown hair. He was a farmer and enlisted in the 12th Michigan Infantry, Company A in Adamsville, Michigan, in Cass County. Jerry, can you get my water back there, please? He would have fought in each battle between his farm and Cass County, Michigan, and Tennessee. His company's descriptive book says that he fought in the Battle of Shiloh near Pittsburgh Landing, Tennessee. There is no record to indicate when he became ill, but Jonathan died on May 16, 1862, just 3 months and 1 day after he mustered out. His military records state that he died in Camp Logan at Pittsburgh Landing from typhoid fever. He was listed as being single, so he left no wife and no children that we know of. It says that he was married to Amira Lobor on March 27, 1853 in Cass County. She probably died before Jonathan enlisted in 1862. The mystery I mentioned earlier is that Jonathan Stevens is registered as being buried in 2 different places. As you can see here, he has a headstone here and is listed in the Berrien County Cemetery book as being buried here. But he is also one of many names of soldiers buried in unknown graves in Shiloh National Cemetery in Pittsburgh Landing, Tennessee. In order to try to solve this mystery, our researcher contacted Shiloh to see what they could tell about Jonathan. Marcus Johnson with Shiloh Cemetery explained that the men buried in the unknown graves at Shiloh were men who died in the area, either during the battle or from disease before the camp moved on. The men were buried very near the outskirts of camp, and some attempt was made to note that there were who was approximately where. Most of these burials were along the Tennessee River. In 1866, the department established a cemetery on the battlefield of Shiloh, and workers began the task of disinterring the dead from 156 different locations on the battlefield so the soldiers could be buried in the new National Cemetery. The available records at the time they took the dead from not only the battlefield but from 565 different locations along the Tennessee River, where Jonathan Stevens was most likely originally buried. Mr. Johnson also explained that none of these graves were marked with names. Therefore, when they were reburied at Shiloh, there is no way to identify who was exactly buried there. Their records indicate that Jonathan Stevens is buried in one of 2,359 unknown graves. So where is this grave marker come from? Someone ordered one for Jonathan Stevens under the assumption that he's buried in said cemetery. Witching rods do react positive to someone buried here. Whether here or in Shiloh, we hope that Jonathan is at peace and rests easy. Sylvester Shedd. Shedd was the son of Samuel Shedd, who served in the Revolutionary War. And Rhonda Kellogg Shedd, he was born on May 18, 1786 in Sheffield, Massachusetts. When Sylvester was just a boy, his parents moved their family to Vernon in Oneida County, New York. From there, they traveled to Camillus in Onondaga County, New York. He married Miss Sally Smith in January of 1809, and they soon started a family with their first child, Samuel Kellogg Shedd, born in 1810. When the War of 1812 started, Sylvester became a private in the New York 2nd Regiment under Colonel Dutton. Their second child, Loamy, was born 1812, leaving Sally alone with her toddler and an infant. After the war, Sylvester was granted 40 acres of land in Three Oaks Township, and sometime between 1836 and 1839, Sylvester, Sally, and their children headed west to Michigan. Sylvester's land grant was officially filed in Kalamazoo on May 1st, 1839. According to an article dated December 31st, 1935 in the Herald Palladium, Sylvester and Sally Shedd were the second settlers to the area. In case anyone is wondering, the article listed Richard Love as being the first settler in Three Oaks. Sylvester passed away on August 13, 1866 at the age of 80 years. The state of Michigan did not keep records of deaths until 1867, so we have found nothing yet that tells us how Sylvester died. Sally Shedd was born in 1789 in New York to Timothy Smith and his wife Eunice. She passed away on September 22, 1877, from old age, according to the Michigan Death Index. Some sources give the year as 1875, but this is incorrect. Sally's resting place was unknown until the document found in the Three Oaks Library that helped us solve other mysteries surrounding the cemetery revealed that Sally was buried here as we suspected. Two of the Sylvester and Sally's children are documented as being buried in Shedd, and we will talk about them as we continue. And this is likely where Sally is buried, right here, right next to her husband. We're going to go down to the center. The children of Shedd Cemetery. Besides the ones I have already talked about, there are a number of children buried here in Shedd Cemetery. Frederick Cannon's grave is unknown here. Frederick was born on May 31st, 1910 to James Cannon and Lillian Russo Cannon. He died 3 days after his birth on June 3rd. His cause of death is listed as premature birth. Anna was born on September 19, 1873, and was only 2 years old, and she died on March 20th, 1876. She was the daughter of Cornelius and Sarah Decker. Louis Lemmerhart was the son of Henry and Anna Lemmerhart. He was 11 years old when he died on April 1st, 1883, from heart disease. Henry Long was the son of Frederick and Dara Long. He passed away when he was 2 years old, a victim of croup. Lottie Mae Liddell was laid to rest in Shedd Cemetery when she was 7 months old, 2 days. The year of her death is not readable on her headstone, and no death record has been found so far. Frederica and August Midler were the children of Gustav and Sophia Midler. August was 4 and Frederica 15 when they both died on October 21st, 1875 of typhoid fever. Gustav and Sophia lost another son, Wilhelm, on September 4th, 1876. He was just 4 months old. No record has been found as to the cause of his death. Matilda Worley. Little Matilda was almost 5 years old when she passed away on February 19, 1895 from consumption. She was the daughter of Henry and Agnes Worley. Joseph Sense is also buried here. His cause of death is unknown. He was born on November 18, 1863, and died on August 18, 1866. He was the 3-year-old son of John Adams Sense and Anna. John and Anna also had to endure the death of their infant daughter, Caroline. She was born and died on May 28, 1875. The cause of death is listed as unknown, and she is not reported as being buried in Shedd Cemetery, but it's very likely she is in an unmarked grave near her brother Joseph. Augusta Neville is a 6-year-old buried here. She died on September 22, 1863. Her brother John passed away 2 years later at the age of 2 months on October 3, 1865. They were the children of H. and A. Neville, according to the headstones. Catherine Schul was 1-year-old, 9 months, 7 days when she died on September 5, 1872. Her headstone says she was the daughter of G. and H. Schul. Hetty Tonis. Little Hetty's headstone says she was 3 years old, 9 months, and 3 days when she died on December 14, 1872, the daughter of H. and S. Guthelf Koff was born on May 22, 1863, and was the son of Gottfried and L. Koff. He died on October 2, 1872, at the age of 4. We do not know his cause of death. The German inscription on his headstone translates, "You dear good lad, you." In constant innocent joy, far from lamentation, you now rest in the quiet grave. This phrase is from the late 1700s and its author unknown. It was often used on headstones of younger German boys. And our final stop. Sylvester Shedd and his wife Sally arrived in Three Oaks in 1839 from New York with their 8 children. One of their children was married and traveling with his wife and children. The oldest, Samuel Kellogg Shedd, married Jane Totten, daughter of Gilbert Totten, who also traveled with the Shedd family. Daughter Mary Melissa Totten married Sylvester and Sally's son Erasmus Shedd in Three Oaks in 1842. This section of Shedd Cemetery holds some of the older Shedd graves. Samuel Kellogg Shedd is buried here. An article published in the Acorn on November 5th, 1925 says that Samuel Kellogg Shedd was accidentally killed on March 5th of 1852 when one of his wagons that was loaded with logs tipped over and crushed him. He was on his way to Barnes Mill. The accident happened near the Center Schoolhouse. There could be many of the Shedds buried here, including a child of George and Helen Shedd. George was also a son of Sylvester and Sally. The Berrien County Record, published October 16, 1879, George and Helen Shedd buried a child last week. We also found a Michigan death record for an unknown Shedd child of George and Helen Shedd. He was listed as a male, age 2, that died from a bowel complaint on March 18, 1874. This little boy is likely buried here along with George and Helen, buried in 1879. We can see that Sylvester Shedd's headstone is once again standing. It was broken in 2 pieces. That Sylvester back there are War of 1812 veterans, this far back. It was broken in 2 pieces and was repaired last fall. His wife Sally, who died in 1877, is most likely buried here beside him. Sylvester and Sally Shedd have 2 children and are recorded as being buried here in Shedd. Their son Erasmus is buried here, as well as daughter Melinda. Melinda married Joseph Brommel. Edwin D. Shedd, buried here, was the son of Erasmus Shedd and Mary Melissa Totten. He was born in Three Oaks on September 30th, 1845, and died on April 16, 1864, at the age of 18. That cause is unknown. He died before Michigan required death records be kept. There is also another Sylvester Shedd recorded in the Berrien County Cemetery book as being buried here in Shedd Cemetery. All that is written in the book is that he is buried in Section 1 and he died on November 11th, 1877. So far, no death record has been located that might reveal his parents' name, but we will continue to search for more information. In Section 4, we have some of the more recent Shedd burials. Harry Hunderford Shedd, the son of Sylvester and Sally, was born on January 5th, 1822 in New York, and traveled with the family to Three Oaks when he was 14 years old. We learned a little about his journey in the obituary of the son Sylvester that it was mentioned that Sylvester's father drove a herd of cattle all the way from Ohio to Three Oaks. They walked most of the distance and only had one covered wagon for a large family. The family experienced all the hardships that faced the pioneers. While their cabin was being built, they stayed with family in the area. Harry's grandfather owned 50 acres of land that he paid Harry $12 a month to clear and farm. With his wages he earned as a farmhand, Harry saved enough money to purchase 80 acres of farmland in Indiana that he sold for a profit and purchased 110 acres of land that sits just west of the cemetery. He married Mariette Thompson on October 18, 1850. She was the daughter of Charles T. and Millicent Betts Thompson. Harry was a prominent farmer in the area and purchased an additional 60 acres of land adjoining his original acreage. Harry and Mariette had only 2 children, Sylvester, who was born in 1851, and Jenny, who was born in 1855. Harry Shedd died on September 17, 1902, in the home he built for his family. His death certificate says he passed away from senility, gangrene, and dropsy. He was 81 years old at the time of his death. In Harry's obituary in the Galene River Gazette, it is said that at the time of his death, he had lived in Three Oaks longer than any other person, and only a few people in the township were as old as he. It also stated that he and Henry Chamberlain were the only residents of Three Oaks that still resided on land held by their fathers. He was described as an industrious and caring man. He was laid to rest beside his wife, Mariette. Her death record that says that she was a housekeeper when she died, which probably just means she was a housewife. She died from pneumonia on March 9, 1888. The only children of Harry and Mariette Shedd are also buried here. The legacy of Harry and Mariette stops with their children, as neither Sylvester or Jenny Shedd married. They remained single and in the family home until after Harry, their father, passed away. They moved together to a bungalow on Orange Street in 1917 after Sylvester retired from farming. Sylvester was born on July 22, 1851 in the family farmstead. He farmed the family homestead with his father and for reasons unknown chose to remain unmarried. We know from the report of the death in the year 1928 in the Herald Lady that he was a charter member of the IOOF Three Oaks. Sometime after he retired from farming in 1917, he moved with his sister to Orange Street. He sold the family farm to Frank Martell. In Sylvester's obituary in the News Palladium of Benton Harbor, it states that Frank Martell had lived his entire life with the Shedd family. Frank must have been deceased at the time of Sylvester's death because the obituary mentions too that Mrs. Frank Martell was still occupying the home. Sylvester died on April 4th, 1928 from angina pectoris, which is a condition of the heart and acute indigestion. His obituary states that he suffered from indigestion for 6 hours before he succumbed. Throughout his life, he held all the chairs of the Old Fellows Lodge, including Grand Master. He was buried in full regalia of a Grand Master with members of the lodge as pallbearers. His funeral was held at the home he shared with Jenny on Orange Street. Another newspaper article in the Herald Palladium on Friday, April 20th, 1928 reads as follows. Miss Jenny Shedd of Three Oaks, only heir to the $7,100 estate left by Sylvester Shedd, who died at Three Oaks on April 6th, today filed petition in probate court for her appointment as administrator of the estate. Shedd left